I'd like to introduce Mira Dontcheva. She's a senior research scientist at Adobe, and she's going to take you through some great gamification of Photoshop. Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse, and thank you all for coming early from lunch. I know it's beautiful out there, so thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to tell you about some of our experiments with gamification in the context of some of our software. But first, who am I? Well, I'm a research scientist, as Jesse said, and I work in the Advanced Technology Labs at Adobe. So the Advanced Technology Labs is essentially the research arm of Adobe. We're not attached to any particular product. We work with all different products. And we're about 60 computer scientists, and our job is to create new technology to make our existing products better and to make new products. And so we work really hard, but we also play. And so here you see a photo of us canoeing last summer. Now, specifically, I'm really interested in learning and creativity, and my research is in trying to build new tools that make it easier to learn complex software. So how many of you in the audience have heard of Photoshop? All of you, great. How many have used it before? Okay, about half of you. Now, how many of you thought it was super easy? I got 2, yes. There's always 2 in the crowd. Great. Well, the rest of you, you're like me. You have a hard time. And so we've been building a variety of different tools to make it easier to use our software. Here in this picture on the left is a new iPad application we just deployed about a month ago that actually connects to your desktop and leads you through tutorials step by step. So if you have an iPad and you want to learn more about Photoshop, go check it out. But today, many of you are really interested in gamification, and so I'll be telling you about some of our efforts around games. And this is something that's a recent, I would say, passion for me, and so I'm excited to come and tell you about it. So what happens today? How do people use software? It turns out that most people learn by doing. So they have a task, let's say, wanting to play with the 3D tools. They open the software and they just start tinkering. And they're like, maybe I can tinker my way to the solution. And some people succeed, but most don't. So what happens then? Well, they go to their favorite search engine and they start looking for tutorials. And eventually they find one and they start flipping back and forth. Tutorial, application, tutorial, application. And if they're successful, they move on, and if they're not, they go back to tinkering with that application. Now, there are some problems with this process. First of all, people have a hard time searching to begin with because the language of the application is often not the same as the language of the user. And second, if they find a tutorial that seems appropriate, it may not actually be appropriate. So first of all, it may be for a different version of the application. And second, it may just not describe the application the way the user sees it. And so these are problems we have to really address in order to make our software sticky and useful to people. But there's one more problem, which is that once you learn how to use the software in a particular way, once you learn how to accomplish that task one way, you never go back and look for other ways to accomplish it. Even though a new version of the software might come out, even though there might be much better ways to do it, the incentive for people to go out and look for those new workflows is very low. And so when we started thinking about how to incorporate gamification into software in order to improve learning, we had several goals in mind. First of all, we really wanted to lower the barrier for entry for new customers. So that person who opens it up for the first time, how do we get them going? How do we get them engaged in what they need to do? 2, can we increase the engagement with our existing customers? Can we keep them in the software longer? Can we show them that there are these cool new features and workflows for accomplishing their tasks? And finally, how can we give everybody a sense of accomplishment? We know that if people feel successful in the application, they will continue to use it. So today I'll tell you about a game we built called Level Up for Photoshop, and this is a collaboration with Bunchball. And so thank you, Bunchball, for inviting me. That's why I'm here, to tell you about this wonderful project. And while Level Up is kind of my baby now, it wasn't my baby a year ago. It was this guy's baby. Peter Karafezov. So he is the one who initially started working with Bunchball and made this happen. And about the same time, he and I met in the halls of Adobe. You think everybody knows each other at Adobe, but no, that's not true. So we happened to meet, and it turned out that I was trying to build a game with one of my interns, and he was building a game on his side of Adobe. And I think the music is coming down. Is that a good thing? Yes? Okay. So about a year ago, we got together, and we started working together. And so today we're a team of a few people trying to explore what it means to have games inside of our software. So what is Level Up? Well, Level Up is really a panel inside of Photoshop. So maybe I'll just walk you through so you see how it works. So when you start, it opens up here, you press Start Playing, and then you encounter a mission. On the left here, you can put your name and your email, but really the focus is around the missions. So we go ahead and start a mission, and these are really just interactive tutorials in many ways, right? So step one is, this is the mission for removing red eye. So let's start with opening an image. And you can open your own image, or you can open one of our sample images. And most users, it turns out, the first time they play the game, they just open the sample image. So we'll go ahead and open the sample image. And then the game says, okay, step two. Now select the red eye tool. And with the red eye tool, click on the red part of the eye. So here there are two different options. The user can actually click on this red eye tool hyperlink, and this will select the tool for them here in the toolbar, or they can go and search for it on their own. And there's a design decision around this that we can talk about later. But for now, they click on it, they move on, they select the red eye tool, then they click on the red parts and the red eyes, and then the game says, great, are you happy? If you say, I could do better, you go back, you continue to edit. If you say yes, you move on. And here we go. First mission complete. I got 30 points. Yes. And it turns out that this particular mission also has a badge associated with it, and so you get the Dead Eye badge because you were really good. You only used 2 clicks, 1 per eye. So here are some of these gamification mechanics that I think a lot of you have been spending a lot of time thinking about. One thing that we made possible in these badges is the ability to share. So we're really interested in getting the word out and having people share with others how they're doing. And so if you press on any of these sharing buttons, then you can post on your wall and say, hey, I just won the Dead Eye badge. I'm awesome. Go play Level Up. And so, these missions are continue. So mission 1 is about removing red eye. Mission 2 is about whitening teeth. So again, you open an image, and then you proceed as it instructs you. You select the tool, you select part of the image, you edit it. If you get stuck, you can press on this View Help button, and there you see some instructional content. And these, if you click on them, just take you to a browser. And so here you can watch this quick retouching video if you're stuck on whitening those teeth. At the end of each level, we also have quizzes. And you can go through and answer questions. And so in the initial pilot of Level Up, we had 3 different levels. And so you could go back at any time and replay any one of these missions. And this turned out to be a critical design decision. Going back and being able to play again to reinforce those skills became important. So the overall launch had 3 main components. First, this in-app panel, but we also had a website where people could look at a leaderboard and see how they're doing, and they could ask questions from one another. They could learn about the game. And there were, of course, prizes. So there were some small prizes, but there was also a very big prize. Every month there was a drawing for Master Collection, which, how many of you know what Master Collection is? A few. So basically that's the entire creative suite of all Photoshop products. It's a huge prize. And so people were incentivized to play in order to put their name in a drawing. So we created Level Up with Bunchball, and we deployed it out in the world, and we promoted it in 3 different ways. First of all, we were really interested in getting those those first-time users. And so we put it in the trial download of the software. So as you started downloading Photoshop from the web, you got the option of downloading Level Up as well. Additionally, we wanted to see how our more advanced, established customers would react, so we put it on Facebook and on Photoshop.com. And then we analyzed what happened a few different ways. First, we used the Bunchball console called Nitro to understand, at a quantitative scale, what's happening, how many people are playing the game, how far are they getting through. We also we also ran monthly surveys of everybody. So everyone got an email saying, fill out a survey, tell us what you think. And then we actually got on the phone with a few of them to really understand what is it about the game that's working and what isn't working. So in the initial pilot period, which was September of last year until February of this year, we had about 1,800 active players. And when I say active, I really mean people who actually completed at least one mission. So we had lots of people who downloaded it but never opened it, lots of people who installed it but never got through that first mission. But we only really want to focus on those people who actually kept going. And so you see here their progression. So many more people got through level 1, and then there was a drop-off. What's interesting is that those who completed the entire game tended to come back. And I'll talk about that later. Why did they keep coming back? Were they coming back and playing again because they wanted more points? Maybe. Or were they coming back because they were using it for a different purpose? We tracked whether they looked at help content, and about 30% of people who played the game did look at help content. And then we found that actually there was very little sharing happening, and that could be because the game itself is not really cooperative. You're not playing together at the same time with somebody else. And this talk earlier today on Draw Something really made it clear that it's really important to engage people in playing together. If you look at the survey data, we actually got quite a few surveys back, and people really liked it. Those that could play the game and got into it loved it. They wanted more missions. They really enjoyed playing the game. They learned something new, and they felt like it gave them some basics. They could get started now. They had a good foundation. Something else that was interesting to us is that people came from all over the world, and that was surprising because the prizes were only for North America. So if you were not in Canada or the US, you couldn't win that master collection, that big carrot. And so people, but despite that, people were really interested in learning, and I think found it fascinating. And so that was great. So here are just a few quotes of impressions we got from the survey to give you more of a qualitative sense for what people liked about it. Someone says, I think it's a great way for someone who is new to the software to learn how to use it. It teaches some great tips and tricks. I enjoyed learning techniques to improve my images. For a user who is not using Photoshop every day, it's hard to remember the steps necessary to do what I want to do. Even though I've been using Photoshop for just over 6 years, there were some little tips and tricks that I never knew about. With the work I do, I tend to use the same handful of tools. It's really great to see what other tools can do. Finally, I find Photoshop to have a huge learning curve. I found this game to help fill in some of the stuff I should have learned and been using but somehow missed while learning. And so, I think what you're hearing here are these two different use cases. One is, I'm a beginner, oh my God, how do I get started? And the other one is, I've been using it, but there's all these other things that I never knew existed. How do I get to learn about them? We also did interviews because surveys, you never quite get what you want from surveys. So we got on the phone and did some screen sharing and really wanted to know, how did you get started with Photoshop? How did you learn about Level Up? What were your favorite missions? Did you ever actually transfer any of these skills outside of the game? Because that was one of our big questions. And so I'll just show you two examples, two stories, because stories are always better than me just telling you numbers. So Melissa is a retired nurse. She uses GIMP regularly. She spends a lot of time in Second Life, and she actually takes pictures of things happening in Second Life, and then she edits them using GIMP. And her friends, they told her, Photoshop is amazing, you have to go try it out. So let's hear what she had to say.
So initially I did not see Level Up. And I went into Photoshop and I went, okay, I'm just going to very simply do some color adjusting and maybe a little bit of cloning, which I knew how to do from GIMP. And I went, where the effing is any tools? And why can't I do layers? And I don't know, you're supposed to be a nifty program, and I don't know how to use it. Damn you!
So then she continues, and she says, and I closed it, and I went back to my GIMP, and I got all cozy with my GIMP, and I called my friend, and I was like, why did you tell me to go use this software? It was terrible. And my friend said, have you tried this game? I mean, it's like a marketing commercial, you know, I should just give this to the marketing guys, but like, you should go try Level Up. And she's like, and I tried it, and then, you know, I understood where those tools were that I already knew how to use. So, you know, for her, it was really a great way to get started. I also talked to some of our advanced users. Here is Justin. Justin is a programmer on his day job, but he considers himself the family photographer. So whenever there's any photos that need to be edited, he's the guy. He does it all. He's been using the software for a long time, for 9 years, and he says, you know, I first got some books, that's how I got started, and then I talked to my friends. So that's really how he learns. And I'll show you what happened with Justin.
I never confessed to this in open court, but I will actually show you what I was doing prior to actually using Level Up.
Okay.
Well, let me, I'll cancel this for now.
Okay.
First thing I'll do is I'll open up one of the photos.
Okay.
And let's see. Here's a good example. This was on a trip to Europe. I was taking pictures of, you know, lots of structures.
A lot of beautiful.
Yeah. And you can see.
So now he says, you know, I really wanted to straighten this image, and so here's what I'm going to do. I would normally just go to image rotation, arbitrary. And then he would just start guessing how many degrees to rotate this image. Can you guess? I mean, just looking at it. You know, 2 degrees, maybe 3. It's terrible. It's like, wow, this is what you were doing. And then he says, yeah, and then I would go to the rectangular marquee tool and see if it was straight, and then I would try to crop it. And with Level Up, he learned that there's this thing called the ruler tool, which if any of you want to do this, go check out the ruler tool. You just drag along a rectangular line, a horizontal or vertical line in your image, and it straightens it for you. So if we go to the end, oops, you'll hear him.
Again, no, that doesn't mean I can't find the horizon, but it's just I'm going back through even some of the photos that I was.
So he says, you know, he uses this tool almost every day, and he's going back to those photos he edited before to edit them with this new tool. So amazing, right? Like this guy who's been using it for 9 years and just didn't know there was this critical tool. So when I got on the phone with these guys, one of the questions in my mind was really, are the points important? Maybe we should just embed tutorials inside of the software and call it done. Do we need the points? Do we need the badges? Do we need to make it a competition? And so I asked all of them, and they said, well, I'm normally not into points. And then a few minutes later, they would be like, yeah, but I really loved competing against my friends. That was so cool. I kept, playing because I wanted to compete. So, at Adobe, people ask me, do the points matter? And I say, yeah, they matter. They keep people going. What was surprising, however, was that while people started playing the game to compete and to collect those points, they kept going because they wanted to keep the panel as a reference. So a few days later, a week later, they now wanted to edit their own images, and they couldn't remember what the workflow was. And so they would open it up and use it as an interactive tutorial. That was a surprise for us. So was Level Up for Photoshop successful? Yes, it lowered the barrier to entry for new customers. More people wanted to buy the product after trying it out with Level Up. Did it increase engagement with existing customers? Yes, it it brought them to discover new tools and workflows, and it incorporated this competitive aspect with their friends. And finally, it gave everyone a sense of accomplishments. Everyone wanted to see more levels, and they transferred their skills to new images. So we have some exciting new steps. I want to make sure that I leave some time for questions. So maybe at this point I can just close it out and give you just 3 lessons learned or 4 lessons learned. Don't assume your customers will play. We thought they would be more excited. There were some segments that weren't as excited. This idea that people will play without extrinsic rewards. We had people from all over the world playing the game, even though they weren't getting any actual prizes. Competition among friends, a strong motivator. And it's really about the long-term view here. Changing people's behaviors is really where the possibilities of impact lie here. And so I wanted to acknowledge folks at Bunchball and at Adobe for really making this come true and for inviting me here. And with that, I'd like to invite you to ask me questions and go try it out. Send me feedback. And I'm here the rest of the day, so if you have comments and questions, please find me.
Great. Thank you so much, Mira. Let's give her a hand, and also thanks to Bunchball for sponsoring this great session. Any questions?
Great presentation, thank you. You had data showing how far people got into Level Up and also anecdotal information about how they used it. Can you quantify the level of success, though, either in terms of how much more quickly people learned using Level Up and also in terms of conversion from interest to actual purchase of software?
I don't have any strong data, any quantitative data for you today. We are going back right now and actually looking at, so Photoshop has instrumentation data for people who want to opt in to that program, and we have data looking at how those people behaved before the game and after the game. We're going back and looking at that data now, so we'll have more quantitative data there. In terms of trial conversions, it's a great question. I mean, it was one of the original big motivators for the games. And I don't have strong quantitative data for you, partly because it's not clear that putting the game in the trial download process is actually the best place to put it. And so we had a much smaller number of people actually install it, even though they downloaded it as part of the trial, to actually open up the product and then install the game as part of it. There's just a very big barrier there, and those beginners especially just aren't, they're just getting started and getting into the product. And so really my dream would be to ship with it, right? So you don't actually have to have this separate installation process. And that's when we can really, I think, get at this trial conversion number.
Yeah, thanks. We only have time for one more quick question. This gentleman was conveniently right next to me, so he's going to get it. And then I'm afraid we're going to have to end, but please approach Mira after the session also.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
I was wondering about you want to encourage the social interactions, and you talked about the tutorials online.
Right.
And the extra resources. So there's a value in pushing people to actually use the resources that have been created. But have you thought about bringing the point score, or kind of like the badge of the point score, into other areas of social interaction, like in your forums or in comments in regards to content and that sort of stuff? So people understand that there's, I don't know, experience with the critique, if you will, or the responses they're getting back. I was just wondering if that was something you're thinking of moving into.
It's a great question. I think there's kind of two different directions one could go there. One is to really reward the people who are helping keep the community active and who are helping those beginners get started. And we have some of that already. We have fairly active forums, and people who are very active I don't know, I'm not 100% sure about how the stars and badges work, but there is some way to show that you're an expert and an active community member. But I think there are also other communities that we're not part of, but those are much more focused on critique specifically. So and there it's really much more about, not so much about I can't use the software, I'm stuck with this problem. It's much more about I want to become a great photographer. I want to become a great designer. Here's the image I took. How can I make it better, right? And I think that to me is a different type of interaction, a different type of critique, and I think both have lots of value. So I'm happy to take it offline. I think we've run out of time. Thank you all so much for coming.